Good day, grade 12s. My name is Carden Madzokere, and I would like to welcome you to Exam Prep, Paper 1 Essay Type Questions. I'm the author of the Distinction-Bound Student Textbooks. I have grade 10, 11, and 12 Economics, and there's also grade 11 and 12 for Business Studies. Right, in this lesson, I'm going to prepare you for Section C type of questions, and Paper 1 is my focus. Right, for you to get good marks in paper 1, you obviously need to do very well in your essay type question. Now, what the department has done is they've come up with 24 possible essay type questions, and fortunately for you, you don't really have to study and master all 24. You have to make a decision up front. I feel like it's too late for you to decide which essay to answer in the exam. I feel like the best time to decide is now, before you go to write the exam, because the reason I say it's too late is because if you decide to answer question 5, if you decide in the exam, what can you possibly do to prepare? There's absolutely nothing you can do because you're already in the exam and you are not allowed to use any textbook or any other material out there. So it will be too late. So you decide ahead of time. You have to make that decision. I can't decide for you. But if you ask me what do I recommend macroeconomics. That's my recommendation for paper 1. And for paper 2, my recommendation is microeconomics. Okay, my reasons are basically, the two topics, I find them easier than the other two, and I might be different from you. So, don't be a follower, be a student. Listen to what I'm saying and make up your own mind. So to get started, I would say out of the 24 essays, 6 are from each main topic. By main topic, we have macroeconomics, economic pursuits. These 2 are for paper 1. Then we have microeconomics and contemporary. These 2 are for paper 2. So from each of the 4 topics, 6 essays were chosen. And shortly you'll see which ones are, which 6 I'm talking about, I'm referring to. And like I said, in this particular lesson, I'll focus mainly on macroeconomics. So that means that's question 5, paper 1. So let's get started and see which are the 6 essays that were chosen. And by the way, these 6 are from 2017 to 19 initially, but then the department decided to extend the 2017 exam guidelines to 2020. And I'm not sure if they are going to come up with a 2021 exam guidelines. I'm not sure. If they don't, then they'll still extend the same essays to 2021. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't work for the Department of Education, so I also wait to see what they take out, and then we simply follow that. So this could be the last year that we are following these 24. So from next year, we might have to do a different set of essays according to their plan, but it might change. Right, so the first possible essay is as follows. Discuss in detail. Okay, by the way, if you go through the exam guideline, right, how do you identify all 24 possible essay type questions? You'll notice that for each, they say discuss in detail, and they make it bold and they underline. So that's how you identify an essay type question. So if you go through all the topics, if you go through the entire document, the exam guidelines, you will see discuss in detail. So in case they change, they come up with a new exam guideline, I'm sure they are going to follow the same way, because it'll be easy for everyone to see which ones are the essays. All right, so this is the first one. It comes from circular flow, you see. So like I've mentioned the topics here. So from circular flow, there's only one possible essay type question. Right, so it says discuss in detail the markets within a 4-sector model. All right, now if you just see this, you might confuse, okay, this for dynamics of perfect markets and imperfect markets, because number one, you see the word markets and then you see four, and some will probably think monopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic, and wow, that would be a big mistake, because in this, the four sector model that we're referring to here is the four secular flow model. Now the four here represents the four main participants in this model. And you know what it is? It's a secular flow. It's a what? It's a model that represents, or that shows how participants in an economy interact. So our four participants: we have households, we have businesses, we have government, we have the foreign sector. So these four are the ones we are referring to. All right, so which markets are related to these four? All right, you can see that as households interact with businesses and government and the foreign sector, we have the factor market. So the factor market is the first one. Then we have the product market. So what is a factor market? It's a market where factors of production are traded. The product market is a market where goods and services are traded. And then we have the financial market, which consists of the monetary and capital. The money market is a market where financial securities are traded in the short term, and here financial securities, or let me say borrowing and lending, is done in the long term. Right, then we have the foreign exchange market, which is a market where one currency can be exchanged for another. All right, we'll go into detail with each and every one of these shortly, but for now I'm just introducing the essays. The second one is discuss in detail the new economic paradigm, explain the smoothing of cycles. Okay, that is business cycles, ne? Explain the smoothing of cycles. So which policies are used, right? They want you to explain the demand side policies, and this is when we when government implements policies that will stimulate aggregate demand, that will make aggregate demand increase. In other words, shifting of the demand curve to the right. So we want you to explain the monetary and fiscal policies, and we want the two sides of each. So we have four things here: expansionary monetary policy and contractionary or restrictive monetary policy. Then we want expansionary fiscal policy and also contractionary or restrictive fiscal policy. So explain how these two policies can be used to smoothen out business cycles. Then they also want you to be able to relate to inflation, that is the peak and trough, as in inflation and unemployment, by using the Phillips curve. So you need to be able to do that. We'll talk about it. Then explain supply side policies. All right, so we had the demand side. So these are policies that will stimulate aggregate supply. In other words, these policies are mainly focused on the consumer, and these policies are mainly focused on the producer, because the consumers are the ones that demand goods and services, and then the producers are the ones that produce the goods and services. All right, so explain supply side policies and how aggregate supply can be stimulated through reduction in cost, improving efficiency in markets, and then improving efficiency in okay, this one was improving efficiency in inputs, and then improving efficiency in markets. All right, like that. Right, the next possible essay type question comes again from business cycles. Remember, we have 5 topics. So the first topic is only 1, and this topic, you can see it has 2 possible essay type questions, and I'll have to change my pen here. All right, so discuss in detail what the features underpinning forecasting. We'll talk about it. So we want the indicators, and by the way, we have 4 indicators. Some think there are 3. There are many textbooks will show you leading, coincident, and lagging, and they don't show this one, the composite. So we'll talk about it. Then we also want you to explain the length, the amplitude, the trend line, extrapolation, and moving average as tools that can be used to forecast. Right, the next one comes from public sector. So public sector is topic number 3. And then we have international trade, and then we have protectionism and free trade. So let's find out how many essays we have under public sector. Right, so under public sector we have, which happens to be our 4th possible essay type question. So out of your 6, this is number 4. Discuss in detail how each of the following factors contribute to poor public sector provisioning. All right, so, you all know that the public sector is very important. Like, government has to be there for a couple of reasons, to look problems like, you see, we in term 2 or under microeconomics, there's a topic called market failure. Of course, you know it at this point in time because, you're preparing for your final exams, I guess. So you know market failure. So such problems need government intervention. And there are merit and demerit goods. So under that, you see markets tend to oversupply demerit goods and undersupply merit goods. So for that reason, government has to be there. But now, as government is there are certain problems that arise. So they want you to be able to discuss in detail how each of these can contribute to poor public sector provisioning. And with that, I came up with the word papape. All right, so something like this. Right, if you look here, my P, that will be, I normally start with privatization. So that's my P. Then we have A, that's accountability. You see this A. Then we have the other P, that's the pricing policy. And then we have A again, the problem of assessing needs. Then we have another P again, that's parastatals. And then last but not least, we have efficiency. Take note, nationalization is the same as privatization. So I came up with this word papape to just help you remember in case the question says, discuss in detail problems of public sector provisioning. So you have to think about the word papape, and that's going to help you, P is for what, A is for what, like that. Right, so the next possible essay type question is discuss in detail. Okay, you see again, in detail, the main objectives of the public sector in the economy. And for this one, I came up with the word ifepe. Okay, let me write it there. And so ifepe, the E is for economic growth, the F is for full employment, the E is for exchange rate stability, the P is for price stability, and the E is for economic equity. All right, so you must be able to discuss these. We'll go into depth. Right, under international trade, they identified no essays for the 3-year cycle. You see what I meant? By 3-year cycle, they meant 2017 to 2019. All right, so out of these years, and remember, it has now stretched to 2020. I don't know if it will go to 2021. I don't know. Right. Then the last topic happens to be, I call it 6 and 7. The reason I call it 6 and 7 is there's no way they'll ask you this essay type question like discuss in detail export promotion and import substitution using, number 1, definition, methods, reasons, and disadvantages. I don't think it's possible. The reason why I say it's impossible is because it will be a very, very long one, and thereby making it one of the easiest of them all if they ask it like this. So what I think is number 6 will be discuss in detail export promotion using these. You see? Definition, methods, reasons, and disadvantages. Or number 7 is discuss in detail import substitution. Like, I don't think it's possible to ask export promotion and import substitution at the same time. All right, so personally, I'll call it 6 and 7, like you see shortly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to past papers. Take note, Feb, March. Okay, I'm starting from 2017 up until November 2019. And so the exam guidelines was was made in 2017, the one that we're currently using. And so Feb March is too early, like, okay, but I'll just use this one as an example. But the main ones that we'll talk about, the ones that have come since the implementation of the current exam guidelines, is November. And also take note, I'm going to use May, June as an example, but I don't think the fact that something came in May, June, I don't think it could prevent it from coming in November. Okay, there's a reason I'm saying that. The May, June is for the learners that are repeating matric, and the Feb, March, it's supplementary. The ones who didn't make it will qualify to rewrite in Feb, March, they'll write the Feb, March. And so the main ones will be November 2017 up until November 2019. Also take note that I couldn't find, like, it's not there on the department website. I couldn't find Feb, March 2019, last year's paper. I don't know why it's not there. There's nothing for 2019 Feb, March. I don't know why the department did not upload that. So yeah, so I'll use what we have. All right, so this one would say, so in an exam, like I said, you will have made up your decision, so you don't even look at this one because you have decided. Remember, I said today I'm focusing on macroeconomics. So you don't answer this one if you decide to go for macroeconomics. So out of the 6 possible essays, this is the one that comes first. Let's do it. The state plays okay, take note, this is not the question yet. They always start with such a statement, so you just read it. The state plays a significant role in mixed economic system and is therefore one of the largest sectors in the economy. All right, the state, okay, in a mixed economy like the one we the mixed economic system, the one we have in South Africa, is where, market forces of demand and supply, they could do the job, and at the same time government also intervenes. And so it's that mix that we have. Okay, like, there's what we call a centrally planned economic system, and there is what we call a free market economy. Right, so in South Africa we used a mixed economy where government intervention happens, and also in certain cases forces of demand and supply do the job. All right, so let's see what the question is now. Discuss the macroeconomic objectives of the state. All right, so as I mentioned, for you to answer this one, personally I've come up with the words IFEPE. All right, so we have our IFEPE like this. Right, so let's see, what is it that you have to say for you to, to answer this essay type question? The first thing you have to introduce. So your introduction has 2 marks. Okay, so what I recommend for your introduction is, unlike in business studies where your introduction can be just a statement, any general statement, and also for business studies you need to have 2 points because they are giving you 1 mark for each. But with regards to economics, you'll have to define the key term. Okay, let me put it that way. You have to define the key term, or so I think something that you would want to define in this case is, okay, anything related to this. Right, macroeconomic objectives. So you can talk about macroeconomic objectives in general and say these are the main objectives of the government. This is what the government feels is the most important thing in an economy. So there are 5 main things: economic growth, full employment, exchange rate stability, price stability, and economic equity. So I think one other term that you can define in this case will be the word economic growth, if you want. And for you there, you'd want to say maybe something like economic growth is an improvement in it's when a country increases its production capacity. Yeah, You can put it that way, ne? So you come up with that definition, and yeah, it's going to be very easy. Then you now will be getting 1 mark for each of the 5 that you come up with. So you probably start with economic growth. So there, what you want to be talking about is real GDP, the thing that we use to measure economic growth for us to know whether our economy is growing or not. You have to talk about real GDP. And you might also want to be relevant. You might also want to talk about the things that are currently happening in the economy. Like currently, our government is not achieving this objective because our economy is actually going down, something like that, ne? Or if at that time it's going up, you can also, and if you have the correct figures, you might also want to talk about the rate at which the economy is going up. So you can say currently our real GDP is up 2% for the first quarter of 2020, or it's down so much percent. But don't talk percentages if you are not accurate, because we'll have to check for accuracy, ne? But it doesn't mean if you don't know what's going on currently, you shouldn't, be talking about it. So you can just talk about economic growth as in general. So, and you do it in point form. You tell us that economic activity is measured, or you can say the key indicator for measuring economic activity is real GDP. Then you probably define what that is, ne? Or real GDP or GDP at constant prices. Then you might want to talk about that, and then all those things. And then after that, you go to full employment. So there you want to tell us what full employment is. And this is when it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in the country is employed. This means that anyone who's within the economically active population is employed. So that is anyone who's willing and able to work must be able to create a job for himself or get a job. So that is what full employment is. So it is 100% employment, no unemployment in that country at all. So you can see that, wow, this will be a very difficult objective. But if government was to achieve this objective, that would be nice. Anyone who's willing and able must be able to get a job. And this one is common with a centrally planned economic system. But for a mixed economic system like the one we have here in South Africa, it's one of the disadvantages is unemployment. So yes, government may have it as an objective, but it's very difficult for them to, realize this one. The next one will be you discussing exchange rate stability. And how you talk about exchange rate stability is you'd say, in this case, in this one, government wants to ensure that the rand is stable. So this is now the rate at which our rand exchanges for other currencies. So government wants to achieve exchange rate stability, meaning the rand has to be stable. So what is stability? It is the rand mostly appreciating over, other currencies over a long time. And if it was to be depreciating against other currencies, then it doesn't I would say it doesn't have to happen like instantly. Let's say it takes a week for the rand to lose 50% of its value. That way I think would say the rand is not stable. Right. So exchange rate stability, it's mainly the goal of, like, the institution that is mainly responsible for exchange rate stability will be the Reserve Bank. Yeah, because one of their main things is to protect the value of our currency. Anyway, they are the ones who are responsible for printing it. So yeah, and in South Africa we use what we call a free floating exchange rate system, which means mainly market forces of demand and supply do the job. So there are external things that could tarnish that could cause the depreciation of the rand. And so yeah, government will try by all means to to make the currency float freely. But in some cases you would find the Reserve Bank might sort of interfere, and one of the things they could possibly do is to maybe buy the rand. So they'll go on the open market and sell US dollars, exchange them for South African rands, and that will create demand for the rand. And you know what will happen if the rand demand for the rand increases? It will appreciate. So yeah, they can, and when that happens, it will be a bit tricky to continue calling it a free floating exchange rate system. The next one will be price stability. And in South Africa, we have this target of 3 to 6%. So inflation target. Okay. So the Reserve Bank has this target 3 to 6%. Inflation is a general increase in prices, so prices do increase over time, but prices in South Africa should not increase at more than 6% per year. If that happens, we say our prices are not stable. So we use this target to measure stability. And this macroeconomic objective is mainly on prices. It's mainly on inflation. So prices have to be stable. So anything that can be done to combat inflation will be done. And that is to try and ensure that price stability is achieved. And currently, I would say, yes, the prices in South Africa are stable. One of the reasons for instability is an increase in demand. That's why there is high inflation mostly during a prosperity phase of a business cycle. So currently we are going down, yes, due to COVID-19. And so there isn't much demand for goods and services. So prices are a bit stable. But before COVID, prices were stable anyway. The Reserve Bank has been way within their target lately. Playing around 4% inflation. You can check the figures. And there was a time, I think 2 years back, where we were a bit struggling in terms of price stability. But bottom line is, I would say prices are stable in South Africa. The next one is, the last one actually, is economic equity. And government tries to ensure this one through, in South Africa, we have a couple of methods to redistribute income, and one of them is South Africa uses a progressive income tax system, which is charging high income earners more tax than low income earners, and that is a way to try and bridge the gap. So here it's mainly the main indicator here will be the Gini coefficient, because it is what we use to measure the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So let's see the main indicators for each. So for economic growth, that will be real GDP. For full employment, that will be the employment rate. And so EAP is one of the indicators that play part here. And then for exchange rate stability, the one will be a CPI, yes, Consumer Price Index. This is our indicator that we use for this one. And then for price stability, that will be, oh my goodness, I made a mistake. Price stability, that will be CPI. And for exchange rate stability, it will be the exchange rates, actually. Yes. And then the last one, which is economic equity, I mentioned it already. That will be the Gini coefficient. All right. So this is how you would answer this essay if you were sitting for the exam in March 2008-17. Now, let's go to the next one. The next one was the May-June 2017, and by the way, this one is the one that they do in June. And let's have a look. South Africa's, by the way, you will have to, if you are following this, you will have to ignore. Right, South Africa's international trade policy consists of export promotion. Okay, we have a keyword here, export promotion, and import substitution. All right, like that. So we have these two, but remember, it's the one I was saying, I think it's impossible to ask both of them at the same time. Now they want you to discuss export promotion. Okay, so the main one here is export promotion. Like I said, it will be impossible. If they do, they probably won't give you everything. They can say, okay, export promotion and import substitution, and maybe just give you the methods. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's possible. Right, so discuss export promotion as part of South Africa's international trade policy under the following headings. Right, so the first thing, they want the reasons. Now, let's just look at export promotion. Okay, we do this topic under protectionism and free trade. Ne? Right, so these two, think about the word export promotion. Just try to process the phrase. If you process it well, you'll notice that we are making things in South Africa. That's number one. Number two, we are our target market is not South Africans. Look at it. Because we are making things in South Africa, but we are targeting to sell these things outside the country. So export promotion. Now think about it. If we make things in South Africa, what good things will come up? Because us talking about reasons, it's a way of us talking about the advantages. So what do you think are the advantages of making things locally and then selling them abroad? Okay, I think you can see that one of the reasons there is that we'll have to produce things in bulk. And so if we do produce things in bulk, there's going to be job creation, right, in South Africa. So jobs are going to be created for us to make things in bulk. Why am I saying in bulk? Because the export market is big. We are not targeting the 60 million people in South Africa. We are targeting the people in the world. So we want to sell in Brazil, in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, in Australia, in Tanzania, everywhere. So you'll see that job opportunities, jobs will be created due to that. So one of the reasons for export promotion is to create jobs in South Africa. You see, that makes sense. Right, the next one is, okay, I've mentioned it already. I'm saying here, the export market is way bigger than the local market. So if it's bigger, then yes, it becomes a reason. The next one is the country achieves significant export-led economic growth. So our real GDP, remember in the previous essay, economic growth is one of the macroeconomic objectives. Government wants to achieve economic growth. And so if they want to achieve that, one of the ways in which they can achieve it is through export promotion. So you can see that. So your reasons come up. Okay, you see I've given 3, I think, right now. And so if I've given 3, so already it's 6 marks. So try to think, maybe let me think. Export markets are much bigger. I mentioned that. It leads to lower retail prices. Okay, that's true. Why? Because of competition, right? You know what competition does? It makes people become more efficient, and companies will realize economies of scale and things like that. So it's a good thing. So it's one of the, so I've said 4 reasons, so that way you can get your 4 marks. Now the thing is, how can government achieve that? Like, what is it that government can do? So in other words, now I'm asking about the methods. What methods are they in place? Right, the first method that government can use are incentives. Now think about incentives. What could they be? Now these incentives can be in form of information or something like that. Now if you are given an incentive, the government can supply information, like I said, on the export market in order to stimulate exports. If let's say you make something here in South Africa, or you know how to make something, and you are not making it because there is no market for that in this country, then if government gives you information that, look, this thing that you make here, there's an audience or there is a market out there in Brazil. So you start making those things. Okay, yeah, you know, let me just say, I once taught in an area where people were making out of wood or a certain type of rock. They would make animals, like they would make elephants, they would make giraffes, or things like that. And if someone would give them the information that, okay, that was back in Zimbabwe. If someone would give them the information that, oh, in South Africa, there's a company called, okay, just make something up. There's a company called blah, 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 which is located in Cape Town, and they get so many tourists, and people, those tourists buy these, they like them, then they take them back to their countries and so on. Do you notice that giving that person the information that there's a company that wants these things that you are making, it's like an incentive. So that will make that person make those things in bulk. So now for him to be able to make enough to supply the market, because this company here in South Africa would say we want to order an order for 200,000. So how do you think the person back there will make those items and be able to supply? That person will need help. So you'll need people to go out there and, get the wood for him, bring it, cut into pieces. And if he's the genius if he's the artist, if he's the one who knows how to do it, then he'll employ people to, just prepare, and then he does the finishing. Do you notice that the people who are helping him, that's job creation? But now, how has it happened? It has happened through an incentive. And I'm giving information here as one of the examples of an incentive. The next thing that government could do is government could subsidize the production of something that is needed outside the country. So if government subsidizes the production of something that is needed outside the country, it makes the production of that item cheap here in South Africa. And so that will sort of promote the exporting of those goods. So it makes it cheaper to produce it in South Africa, thereby making it internationally competitive, because people out there will want to buy good items but at a lower price. Okay, so that incentive will make our items cheaper. Okay, if I am to give an example, let's say a certain type of shoe costs 100 Rand in Zimbabwe, and that same type of shoe costs 100 Rand here in South Africa. Do you think Zimbabweans would come and buy those shoes from South Africa if they cost the same? Obviously, they wouldn't. Okay, so now for Zimbabwe to come and buy from South Africa, the South African government could give a subsidy to companies that are making shoes here in South Africa. So that will probably make the shoe cheaper, let's say 70 Rand. So do you think people will come from Zimbabwe to buy shoes in bulk for 70 Rand, go back to Zimbabwe and sell them for 100 Rand? The answer is absolutely, because they'll make a profit of 30 Rand per shoe. So they'll come and buy them in bulk and make money that way. Do you notice that if government does not give a subsidy to the manufacturers, then Zimbabwe wouldn't come and buy from South Africa? So if the South African government wants employment to be created in South Africa, but export-led employment, then government could subsidize the production and make the items cheaper. Now, the next method is what we call trade neutrality. Now, the word neutral, you see what it means. It means to neutralize, right? And so for you to understand trade neutrality, okay, let me define it first. I would say a tariff that is equal, or an import duty that is equal. A subsidy that is equal to the import duty is paid. Now, how does that happen? Let me make this scenario. Let's say shoes cost 70 Rand. Okay, it's a different example from the one I did here. Okay, I'll put a line to distinguish the two. Okay, so shoes cost 70 Rand in South Africa. And in Zimbabwe, those same shoes are sold for 100 Rand. Okay, and they are made in Zimbabwe and sold for 100 Rand. Now, if someone comes to South Africa and buys these shoes, they'll get to the border. So this will be the border, and they want to take the shoes to Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe will charge, let's say, a tariff or an import duty, let's say, of 30 Rands. So if you come to South Africa and you buy shoes for 70. You get to the border, you pay 30 rand for every pair of shoe. So what is your total cost? Your total cost is 100. So to come and buy them here and go and sell them in Zimbabwe doesn't make sense. So do you notice that way Zimbabwe won't come to buy from South Africa, because at the end of the day, the duty that they pay at the border will make the shoes the same price as the Zimbabwean price. So it won't make sense, ne? So you know what South Africa can do to counter this? South Africa will pay a subsidy which is equal to this tariff. So what will that subsidy do? It will neutralize the tariff. Look, so if the subsidy is 30 rand, then if you buy shoes for 70, they'll end up costing 100, right? So what South Africa will do is they'll pay a subsidy. They'll subsidize the production of, that will be 30. They'll subsidize the production of shoes and pay 30 rand. This 30, you notice it's equal to the tariff. So how much will it cost to make the shoe? 7 minus 3, that will be 4. So it will cost the shoe 40 rand to make in South Africa. What makes it cheap is the subsidy that the government is paying. But why is government paying a subsidy of 30 rand? Because government is trying to neutralize, the tariff. So this tariff here is neutralized by the subsidy. So the 40 then, so people will come from Zim, buy the shoes for 40 rand, get to the border, pay 30 rand. That 30 rand is the tariff, ne? And then it will give that a price of 70. So will people come from Zimbabwe to South Africa to buy shoes? Yes, they will. What will make them come and buy them? The fact that there was trade neutrality, which is what? Which is a subsidy which is equal to a tariff is paid. It's as simple as that. Right, the last part of the question is, what are the disadvantages of export promotion? Okay, of course, it will have some disadvantages. The first one that you may want to talk about is the real cost of production is hidden. Okay, why? Subsidies will hide the real cost of production. Because look, someone is coming to buy shoes for 40 rand. Do they really cost 40 rand to make? No, they actually cost 70 rand to make. So what makes it look like they cost 40? There is a subsidy that is hiding the real cost. So that's one of the advantages. Number 2, lack of competition. These incentives and subsidies, they reduce the price and force competitors who may be able to create sustainable and profitable businesses out of the market. So who is driven out of the market? These other suppliers abroad, let's say the ones in Zimbabwe. And why? Because maybe the Zimbabwean government is not doing anything to try and help the manufacturers. So in that case, there will be a lack of competition. So if government doesn't intervene and subsidize and all that, then competition would be fair. So you notice that in this case, competition is unfair. Right. The other disadvantage that can arise there is increased tariffs and quotas. So things like Zimbabwe will begin to increase their tariffs, right? Because they also want production to happen locally, right? And so they will probably increase the tariffs. The other one is they'll probably impose some quotas, and a quota is a restriction on the number of items that can be brought into a country. For example, they could say you cannot cross the border with more than 3 pairs of shoes. So that will be, so 3 will be a limit, right? And that will be done to protect local production. So quotas can be imposed, and so that becomes a disadvantage. The next one is which I want to be the last one. Wow, that reminds me, I don't think I explained the additional part of the previous essay. I don't think so. Wow. Right. Protection of labor incentive industries. That will be the last disadvantage. Right. Let's go to the additional part, the one for 10 marks. It says analyze the argument in favor of the free trade policy. All right. You all know what free trade is. This is when countries trade freely. Now, what are the arguments in favor? So when we say arguments in favor, we are actually saying what are the advantages of free trade, right? One of them, the one that I would always say, like the first one is specialization. If there's free trade, countries will specialize, and we normally say they would specialize in making the things that they have a comparative advantage in making, so that will make all countries better off. If you specialize in the production of maize, you become efficient in that, and so you don't have to try and be jack of all trades as a country. You'll have to find the things that you have an urge and an advantage in making, so you specialize, and specialization becomes it happens, and because of that, economies of scale will be achieved. So economies of scale are a source of comparative advantage. Right, so that's one of the things you would want to say. The other one you may want to say is the choice becomes enlarged. Because of free trade, you are spoiled of choices. There are so many things that you can buy from any country you want to. Then trade allows, okay, I mentioned that one, economies of scale. If countries specialize in producing goods for which they have a comparative advantage, world trade and consumption will be maximized, and that will be a very, very good thing. And so after this, you obviously have to conclude your essay. And for conclusion, I didn't talk about conclusion in the previous one. Conclusion, you may want to say anything neutral, anything from you, like what is your opinion on maybe everything that you have been discussing. All right, the next one is discuss any 5 problems of public sector provisioning in South Africa. Okay, I was talking about this one that time. I said it's papape. Okay, so we have P, we have A, we have P, we have A, and we have P, we have E. Okay, so P, it will be privatization. A will be problem of assessing needs. P will be the pricing policy. A will be accountability. And then P will be, let's see, privatization, pricing policy, parastatals. Okay, and then E will be efficiency. Yeah, there's a lot of inefficiency, and you would want to ignore this one. Okay, because you want to just study 6 possible essay type questions. Right. So one of the problems in public sector provisioning, I mentioned that government has to provide us with public goods and services. But one of the key problems they have is that, they are not accountable. So accountability means to give an explanation for one's decisions, actions, and expenditures. So the people require the state to use the taxes for the purpose for which they are raised, and not to abuse the powers it was granted. But you know that this will always happen. People that are in authority will always misuse funds. Right now we are having this problem of the COVID funds and all that. And the reason is, the people who are in parliament, the people who are in power, they are mostly accountable to their respective ministries, let me say, but not to us, the taxpayers. So they could lie to us. They could make it look like something was done. I have a good example. There's a place where on the map it would say it's a tarred road, but in reality you go there, it's a gravel road. Like, so people can lie and they say yes, we installed the TAD rod, but they probably didn't. And the reason is they'll go out there and lie and act like it happened. So accountability is one of the main problems that we'll face. The next one is inefficiency. Mostly there is no competition in so state-owned entities. Okay, no, let me not talk about those. Let me talk about the government in general. There's a lot of inefficiency. Like, it's possible for you to remain at a job in the public sector even if you are inefficient. But if you go to the private sector, it's difficult for you to be inefficient and you stay at the job. They'll quickly fire you. But there are so many people who are inefficient who work for the government and nothing happens to them. All right. And we have three major reasons for inefficiency. The first one is bureaucracy. And we sometimes call it red tape. There are so many officials that are too much focused on the procedures and the rules, and they become indifferent to the quality of whatever it is that has to be offered, let's say the service. So so they want the procedures too much. They're insensitive for anything. They cannot divert from the procedure. They are too focused on the procedures, and in some cases they become insensitive to a point that, but you might not see this problem of bureaucracy most in the private sector. The other one is merely incompetence. Just go to government departments, you'll see a lot of incompetence there. So many people lack the skill, and sometimes it's because it's because of what's the word, nepotism. Yes. So you are put in power, and the person who puts you in power or gives you a position is your uncle, but you don't even know how to do what it is that you have to do. But then this problem of nepotism is not as common in the private sector. So incompetence leads to inefficiency. The last one, or one of the last main reason for inefficiency is corruption. And this one is a very, very big problem. Right, the next, okay, I've explained accountability. I've explained, what was it? Inefficiency. Right, now let me explain the next one, which is the problem of assessing needs. Right, it is, since it's not forces of demand and supply that mostly determine what should be produced, how it should be produced, and when it should be, and for whom it should be produced. It's mostly difficult to assess the real needs of the community. So there can be that problem of since there is the absence of those signals, demand and supply. So the market price acts as a signal to the producer, communicating the needs of consumers and the quality and the quantity demanded. So in the absence of this, the state or state-owned enterprises do not operate according to these forces of demand and supply. So it therefore becomes difficult for the state-owned enterprise or even government departments to assess the real needs of consumers, and they are prone to under or oversupply public goods. So that becomes a problem. The next one will be the pricing. It was this one. The pricing policy. Like I said, in the private sector, price is determined by the intersection of these forces of demand and supply, and so where they meet, that's where price is determined, and that's where quantity is determined. So with state-owned enterprises, or also because it's not only them, it's not only the ESCOMs and so on. Also think about departments like the Department of Home Affairs and so on. And I always talk about the Department of Home Affairs because I interact with them. Let's say when I'm going to Zimbabwe, just think about what happens at the border. They are not really when they stamp your passports, they don't do it to finish, or they don't do it like we are serving people. They just do it because they're at work and they have to be there until 12. So they don't care how much they produce and so on. And no one is there to fire them for them not doing what they have to do. So you'll notice that it's not only state-owned enterprises, even though I'm mentioning them so much. So these state-owned enterprises and also government departments do not work within the market system of demand and supply. Like I mentioned, those two forces are important. So this creates problems in determining the price for public goods and services. So like if you look at the water, it won't be, the price of water is not really what it costs. The state sets the prices of goods in the following ways. Number one, free of charge. We have police servicing and many other things. And then user charges, e.g. the tolls. And then we have subsidies where the state may charge the user to reduce a fee. So if you notice there, if the state is using these ways and not the forces of demand and supply, it becomes a problem. Like in this case, we are talking about problems of public sector provisioning. The next one is parastatals, and this one is obvious. State-owned enterprises. They many things that I've been saying here, they show why state-owned enterprises, why they become a real problem. Look here in our country, we are always trying to bail them out. Look at South African Airways, look at Eskom, and they fit into all these things that I was talking about. The likes of efficiency, many of them are not efficient, and the reasons are more or less the same. Some cases there's corruption, some cases it's bureaucracy, and so on. So parastatals are a big problem as well. Right, then we have privatization. Some economists believe that the problems associated with public provision of goods and services are good grounds for handing state-owned enterprises to the private sector. Right, and so the process of handing state-owned enterprises to the private sector is known as nationalization. As privatization. And then nationalization becomes the opposite of that, which is it was a state-owned, it was a privately owned, and now it becomes a state-owned entity. And it looks like, this lesson is already 57 minutes. And wow, I don't know if I'll manage to say all of them, and I think I'll have to be faster and not say much, and at the same time I don't think I'll keep on doing the additional part as I had promised. Right, the next one, discuss import substitution as a part. Okay, this one I won't say much because no, we didn't do it. What we did was export promotion. All right, so I have to do it in depth. Right, import substitution. This is the like I did the first one. What I said was, think about export promotion. Where is employment created? It's created locally, and where is the target market? Is the foreign sector. But let's look at import substitution. Where do we want to make the goods? We want to make them locally. And who is our target market? Our target market is also local. So it's a way of substituting imports. So it's a way of saying, okay, fine, we used to buy this from China, now we want to make it ourselves. So if we don't import it, we are now making it ourselves. So we are substituting imports. So instead of buying it from them, we're now making it ourselves. So how could we possibly do this? And that happens to be the methods, and then we'll do only the reasons. So we are not going to do disadvantages because it's not being asked. And in so many cases, you'll find learners trying to force an answer because you studied the disadvantages, then you try to put it. Yes, your answers are correct, but they won't be awarded marks because it's clear here they want 13 marks for methods and 13 marks for the reasons, like why do we do it. Okay, the first thing that you can do for you to substitute imports is to impose tariffs. A tariff is let me say, it's a tax that is imposed on anything that is imported. So if you want local production, for instance, I'll give the example for car manufacturers. In South Africa, I don't think we have any car that we make as South Africa. But look at the cars that we have in South Africa. We have the BMs, the Benzes, we have, all those cars. And those cars are being manufactured here in South Africa. But if we look at the BM, the Audi, the Mercedes Benz, those cars are German, but they are made in South Africa. All right, so that is a good example of import substitution. So South Africa would say something like, okay, Mercedes, we love your cars, but we want you to come and make them here in South Africa. And then they will make it impossible or difficult for you to, or equally expensive. So they make the cars in South Africa. But let's say those cars are cheaper in another country. Okay, fine. You buy it from another country and then you try to register that car in South Africa. You'll have to pay a big tariff for you to do so. So let's say, okay, I was talking to my friend who's from Sasolburg recently, and he was telling me, oh yes, Mr. Mithing, he was telling me that he has a friend who bought a car in Lesotho, and yeah, they teach together. So he was telling me that the friend is trying to register that car here in South Africa and he's struggling, and the reason is because South Africa is making cars. So why would you want to bring a car from Lesotho? So for you, if you do so, then we are going to charge you a big tariff that will make it even pointless. So instead, if you really need a car, you'll have to buy it locally. If you buy it outside and you try to register it in here, it's going to be very, very expensive to the point of it not making sense. So that is a method. So a tariff can be used to promote or to ensure that production is done locally. The next one is quotas. I mentioned it earlier, and it's a limit on the number of goods that can be brought into a country. So let's say you bring in, you want to sell cars, blankets, anything, shoes, and then South Africa will simply impose a quota and say no one can bring in more than 10 blankets. So now if you want to do to sell blankets in South Africa, instead, will you buy from this local manufacturer of blankets or you buy from China? But for you to go and buy in China and bring it and make sense, you have to buy in bulk. But now, when you get to the border, they tell you can only bring in 10, so it won't make sense. So do you notice that you'll be forced to buy locally because it won't make business sense to go and buy 10 blankets in China and come and sell them here because you won't make any profit. For you to make the profit, you probably need 5,000 of them, let's say, right? So a quota will force you to buy locally. So that is a method that can be used to substitute imports. The next one is subsidies. We talked about subsidies under export promotion, and the same concept prevails. As in, instead of buying cars, I've been talking about cars a lot. Let me say, instead of buying shoes in China, let's say a shoe costs 100 Rand in China, and then that same shoe costs to make 120 here in South Africa. And then the South African government could subsidize 30 Rand, making it 90 Rand here. So do you notice that it's cheaper to buy in South Africa than to go and buy it in China? But what's really making it cheap is the subsidy. Simple. Right, the next thing that can be done, or another method that can be used, is granting of licenses. So yeah, if you don't have a license to do something, you're not going to do it. So they'll simply grant licenses to local producers, and then that means anyone else out there won't be able to do it. Right, then other methods, we have voluntary export restraints, and this could lead to price increase on non-essential imported goods, but protects the local industries. The next one that can be used is exchange controls. A government or a free trade area may seek to reduce imports by limiting the amount of foreign exchange made available to those wishing to import goods. So in the absence of that foreign currency, then you won't be able. So it's as simple as that. Right, then we have physical control. This usually takes the form of a complete ban on the imports of goods and certain goods. Sorry, you cannot import a service. I almost made a mistake there. Right, then we have diverting trade. Some measures are aimed to or at making it difficult to import goods from abroad. And then the last one that I'll give you as a method here is import deposits. Government may require importers to deposit a given sum of money before they can import goods. So that will be another method. Now, why do we do that? I think the biggest reason is to create employment locally, and to ensure that there is a bit of diversification there. Right, I won't go in detail with the reasons as much as I did with what do you call it, with the methods. All right, but maybe just to mention them, there's diversification, and then there's more choices, because we are also now making it locally, and in the absence of tariffs and all that, those local producers might struggle to exist. So now you have this choice of either buying it locally or importing it. But then many people will start to buy locally because, in some cases, like in this case here, it will have made it cheap. All right, let's look at the next essay that has come. And we are not going to go into depth with this one because we have already done it. Discuss in detail macroeconomic objectives. So we repeat that IFEPE, economic growth, full employment, exchange rate stability, price stability, and economic equity, those 5. Right, the next one is November 2018. Discuss all the features that underpin forecasting. And whenever I'm talking about forecasting, I always want learners to think about weather forecast, and it's simply predicting what could happen. So with regards to economics, it's more like we want to just think about it. Let's look at this. Okay, business cycles, right? Successive periods of fluctuations in economic activity, and let me draw this line and call it today. So this is today. Now, what is it that we can do to predict tomorrow? Because we don't know anything beyond this line. So anything beyond this line is tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. So what can we possibly do? That's the question. What can we possibly do to predict what we don't know? Right, the first thing is what I'm answering currently, which is a technique of using what we know. So what we know is from today going backwards, and what we don't know is from today going forward. So the simple technique of using this history, okay, let me put an H, this history to predict the future, that technique of using what we know to predict what we don't know, that technique is referred to as extrapolation. So already I'm answering question number 1. Or actually, I'm giving point number 1. Extrapolation is a technique of using what we know to predict what we don't know. So what tools can we make use of? Okay, number 1, we can use the amplitude. So we can look at this amplitude for what we know, and we use it to predict the next amplitude. Another thing, we can use the length here, this length here, and we put that length here, and we predict something like this, right? So we use this length to predict this one. You notice that I'm now beyond the line, and then I do this. See, I use this length to predict this one. So I'm using this one to predict this one, and then I'm going down again like that. So, but now, how do I know that I should start going down? I'm using the amplitude. So the amplitude can be used to forecast. The length can be used to forecast. Look what else I can use. I can also use this trend line. So the trend line can also be used to forecast. So I'm saying this technique of using what I know to predict what I don't know is called extrapolation. So what are these features that they are referring to? So I'm saying we have extrapolation. I'm saying we have the trend line. I've shown how we can use the trend line to predict. We can use the length. I showed you here. We can use the amplitude to predict also. Then there's something called moving average that we can also make use of. And this method is repeatedly calculating a series of different average values along a time series to produce a smooth curve. So moving average is one of the things that we can possibly use. And so, like I said, I'm not going to do the additional parts. Let me just focus on the main parts, because I'm trying to avoid this to be extremely long. Right, the next essay that came, we have already done import substitution. And so, yes, we did the advantages and the methods. Yes, we did this one. And remember the advantages, we say there's employment, and then there's more choice, there's diversification, and so on. But I'm not going to repeat this one. We did it. And import, yeah, it's the one we did just now. So I'm not going to go into depth with this one. The next one is examine South Africa's export promotion trade policy. Again, export promotion, I did it. I think it was the second essay that I did. So I'm not going to repeat this one. And this was last year, November. All right, so November is the last paper that we are doing. And so this has brought us to the end. But take note, and I'm not saying these are the ones that will come. Take note, from the time we started, this essay has not come. We haven't seen it in a June paper. We haven't seen it in March. So I think you should make sure that you study this one in depth. The other thing that I'm noticing also is this one hasn't come yet. The new economic paradigm. Also do this one in depth. And just because I'm trying to avoid this to be a very, very long lesson, if you check in my textbook, this one will be this one here. It will be lesson number 4. So lesson number 4, if you go to my textbook, you'll see I'm explaining this particular essay. And then you go to lesson number 15, you will see this one, the new economic paradigm. And so, but I haven't done, so you can, I've done a video on lesson number 4, so you can just go and watch lesson number 4, but I haven't done lesson number 15. But you can just go to lesson number 15 in my textbook and you'll see this one. And I'm already on 1 hour 13 minutes. I just don't intend going beyond this, so I just don't want it to be very, very long. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to continue with these daily lessons, and I think the last lesson I did was lesson number 13. So I'll do 14, 15, 16 like that, and make sure that you get this one. So yes, we have actually come to the end of exam prep, paper 1, and I hope that it's it's going to help you pass. I think you'll see the approach. You've learned something, I suppose. And share the video with your friends and make sure you like it as well. And